Dear Olivier and dear friends, first of all, I want to thank Venerable Olivier, which we know from 2017 when he was kindly helped Lama Zopa Rinpoche to lead the teachings in Moscow, in Russia. And from that time, we were kindly experienced his teachings as well. And today, we have a very good opportunity to study letter to the friend of Nagarjuna. And for this occasion, I want to just briefly offer as a sign of auspiciousness these three things, which is mandala, which is a stupa, Kadampa stupa, Heart Sutra, and very interesting statue of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, which were left us by Rinpoche, and before when he was with us in 2019, and he was asked us to keep it for his next visit. And even though the Rinpoche had shown the appearance of kind of changing the body and depart from his body, still his blessing is with us, and we want to share this blessing and his advices to continue our study and practice and study Buddhist philosophy with you. And we thank you, dear Venerable Olivier, that you help us to fulfill Lama Zopa Rinpoche wishes, and we still are trying also to fulfill his wishes. And this is why we are offering this body, speech, and mind of Buddha in this forum to you as the representative of Buddha Shakyamuni and Lama Zopa Rinpoche, for auspiciousness, for the sake of all the Russian people and we to discover the real Buddhahood as soon as possible. Thank you, and please accept it with kindness.
So looks like it's my turn to speak. So thank you very much. First, I want to say I'd like to welcome everybody, and I'm very happy, and I feel very privileged to have this opportunity to share with you the teaching of the Buddha. And I mean, I recognize some face. My Russian friends, I'm always happy to see them. Sometimes I meet them in India. Sometimes it's on the website, but it's always very happy. And so with the introduction of the director, you know, I feel a little bit of pressure right now, you know. So this relation that we have somehow is all due to Lama Zopa. I mean, pretty much you didn't have the choice, and I also didn't have the choice, because when I was in Moscow a couple of times, once in private, he said that I will have to come back and continue to share the teachings of the Buddha with you. And after in a big assembly in front of everybody, I don't know, that there were maybe 600 or 800 people on that day, or maybe 500. Don't know. And again, you know, he asked me, so everything was very clear for me that I'm stuck with you and you're stuck with me. Okay, so we will try to. I try to do, as I said to Anastasia several times, I always try to do my best to find space for you, because I feel that this Lama Zopa, you know, is yeah. So anyway, I'm very happy. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And so before we start the recitation that we do as usual, it's good to set up our motivation. So briefly, we can do it in the following way. We should first feel that we are very fortunate, because we are human beings. We have this precious human rebirth. We have met the Buddha Dharma, and we are still alive. Okay, so having met the Buddha Dharma in the most complete form, this means that today and every other day, infinite opportunity to create the cause of future happiness is offered to us just because of this situation that we have. Okay, so we should feel very fortunate, and we should understand that it is very rare. This opportunity will not last forever, and the appearance of this life, they will cease. This is the only certainty for us, and we don't know when. So it is very important to try to take as much as possible every day the essence of this life, trying to put into practice and to reflect and to contemplate those teachings of the Buddha. Yeah. And in terms of happiness that we can achieve on the basis of the teachings of the Buddha, we should not only think that the mere happiness in a future life is something is the ultimate goal. We have to understand that it is very limited. Also, it is something necessary as a basis. Nevertheless, it is something very limited. We can understand right from this experience that we have now. We have this human body is considered one of the highest form of existence, and yet our day is pervaded by suffering. We are tormented in our body. We are tormented in our mind. It's very difficult to spend even half an hour without being disturbed at some level. So we have to understand that this is not enough. You know, whatever the level of happiness we experience, whatever the intensity of the pleasure that we experience, you see, we have to understand that it's still impermanent, it's still conditioned by karma and affliction, and we are still covered by ignorance and the distortion of reality. We do not still understand our final nature. So this is something unsatisfying. So we have to understand that the nature of our mind is pure, and this final reality, you know, the affliction, the affliction, the klesha, they do not penetrate the nature of the mind. Therefore, it is possible, they are adventitious, and it is therefore possible to free the mind from all of these disturbances and experience like unconditioned perfect happiness. So this is something that we should really long for. Should long for. So, but this, even though this is a very high achievement, still it is not enough. We have to take into consideration all sentient beings. And in the Buddhist context, you see, all sentient beings, because of the mind, as a continuity, as no beginning, exists since beginner's time, then during all of these different existence, we have shared all type of relationship with sentient beings. There have been friends, there have been companions, there have been family members, etc. And in all of this different type of relationship, they have surrounded us by infinite kindness and affection. So therefore, now that we are in this condition, that we have this precious human rebirth, that we have met the Buddha teaching, if we put it into practice, if we contemplate, if we study, if we put it into practice, not only we can transform this mind into a cause of happiness for ourselves, but also that mind can also become a source of peace and happiness for others. So that should be our only motivation. And so we should please think in this way, that through hearing, listening, contemplating, may we achieve, may we achieve the state of Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. So for those who don't know what is this Buddhahood, just this thing that it is the culmination of the form of the mind, where all the quality and all the mistakes have been abandoned, where the mind is totally pure, and therefore all the quality and the ability to benefit and help others is consumed. Okay, so let's think in this way. And with this motivation, we can now we can now read the Heart Sutra to leave imprint in our mind. Okay, with respect to the final meaning of reality, and then there will be the recitation of the verses of refuge for those who are of this tradition, and then after we move on with the actual subject.
Сутра совершенства мудрости. Поклоняясь трем благородным, редким и высшим. Так я слышал однажды. Бхагаван пребывал в Раджагрихе на горе Коршуна с великой общиной монахов и великой общиной бодхисаттв. В то время Бхагаван погрузился в сосредоточение, следующее перечень дхарам, именуемое видимость глубины. И в то же самое время бодхисаттва Махасаттва, Арья Авалокитешвара, рассматривая практику глубокой пражни-парамиты, узрел, что и 5 скандх пусты от самобытия. Тогда достопочтенный Шарипутра, побуждаемый силой Будды, обратился к Бодхисаттве Махасаттве Арья Авалокитешваре с таким вопросом. Если какой-нибудь сын благородной семьи хочет приступить к практике глубокой пражни парамиты, как ему следует выполнять ее? На это Бодхисаттва Махасаттва Арья Авалокитешвара так ответил достопочтенному Шарадватипутре. Шарипутра, те благородные сыновья или благородные дочери, что желают приступить к практике глубокой пражни парамиты, должны ясно и безупречно видеть и эти 5 скандх пустыми от самобытия. Форма есть пустота, пустота есть форма. Нет пустоты помимо формы и нет формы помимо пустоты. Также пустые ощущения, развлечения, формирующие факторы и сознание. Так, Шарипутра, и все дхармы есть пустота, не имеют отличительных признаков, не возникают и не исчезают, не загрязнены и не чисты, не ущербны и не совершенны. Поэтому, Шарипутра, в пустоте нет формы, нет ощущений, нет развлечения, нет формирующих факторов и нет сознания. Нет глаза, нет уха, нет носа, нет языка, нет тела, нет ума, нет формы, нет звука, нет запаха, нет вкуса, нет осязаемого, нет харм, нет сознания от зрительного до умственного, нет неведения, нет прекращения неведения. И далее, вплоть до того, что нет старости и смерти, и нет прекращения старости и смерти. Также нет страдания, источника, пресечения, пути. Нет высшей мудрости, нет достижения и нет также недостижения. Поэтому Шарипутру, поскольку бодхисаттв нет достижения, они опираются на пражни парамиту и пребывают в ней. Поскольку в их сознании нет препятствий, нет и страха. Полностью отойдя от превратного, они тем самым достигают нирваны. Также и все Будды, пребывающие в 3 временах, явственно и всецело достигли полного, непревзойденного наивысшего просветления, опираясь на глубокую пражни парамиту. А потому мантра пражни парамиты, мантра великого знания, несравненная мантра, мантра, равная непревзойденному, мантра, полностью успокаивающая все страдания, известна как истина, ибо она безобманна. Мантра пражни парамиты гласит «Таята ом гаты-гаты, парагаты, парасам-гаты, боди сваха». Шарипутра, так бодхисаттва Махасаттва должны изучать глубокую пражни парамиту. Затем Бхагаван, выйдя из самадхи, похвалил Арья Авалокитешвару, бодхисаттву Махасаттву. Превосходно, превосходно, о сын благородной семьи, так и есть, так и должно быть. Именно так, как показано тобой, и следует практиковать глубокую пражни парамиту, ибо тогда возрадуются даже татагаты. Когда Бхагаван изрек эти слова, возрадовались достопочтенный Шарадватипутра и бодхисаттва Махасаттва Авалокитешвара, и все собравшиеся вместе с богами, людьми, асурами и ганхарами, и все восславили слова Бхагавана. На этом заканчивается Арья Бхагавати Пражни Парамита Хридая Сутра. И строфа «Зарождение прибежища и бодхичиты». В Будде, Дхарме и Высшем Собрании ищу прибежище вплоть до просветления. Силу заслуг от практики даяния и других парамид достану я Буддой на благо всех существ. В Будде, Дхарме и Высшем Собрании ищу прибежище вплоть до просветления. Силу заслуг от практики даяния и других парамид достану я Буддой на благо всех существ. Санге чодак цокхи чогнам ла джанчу барду дагни кепсучи даги джинсо гипе цокнам ки джола пенчер санге друпарашо.
Thank you. So now, before we start the actual text, we need to understand why it is necessary, why it is very important to and what are the benefits, you know, that we can extract from the studying those Buddha scriptures, because it is something very ancient. You see, it's way before Christ. If we talk about Nagarjuna, for example, Nagarjuna came like 400 years after the parinirvana of the Buddha. So we might wonder, you know, what's benefit, you know, to study those very ancient things, you know. So to answer that quickly, we have to understand that whatever we do in our life, whatever choice we made, it can be the one which is we prepare a lot, that we have planified, you know, over a certain period of time, or those more immediate decisions that we take. it is because we want to be happy. So we think that by taking a particular direction, by taking a particular, by making a particular choice, in this way we'll be happier. You know, this is why some people, they choose a certain type of career. Some people, they decide to create to raise a family. Some people, they decide to stay alone. Some people, they decide, you know, to dress in a particular way, or to have a particular haircut. All of this is because we think that in this way we'll be happier. You know, so, and in terms of seeking happiness, most of us, what we do is what we rely exclusively on the sense consciousness. So see, so we have the eyes consciousness, the ear consciousness, the tongue consciousness, the olfactory consciousness, and the body consciousness. So and we spend the day trying to accumulate as much as possible pleasant experience, you know, and through this to the contact of the sense consciousness with its respective object, there is a particular sensation, a particular feeling that arises, and in this way we create an experience of happiness for us. Okay, this is the way it works. The feeling is an omnipresent mental factor. So you cannot find an instant of mind without feeling. So if we look into some philosophy school, like for example also Tantrika, and it is just, you know, like a measure, you know, it's not definite. In a finger snap, you have 65 instant of consciousness, and each of these instant of consciousness is accompanied by a particular feeling. So when the contact, for example, when your ear consciousness enter in contact with a pleasant sound, it's not through the discrimination, to the contact as being discriminating as pleasant, there is a happiness feeling that arises. And on the basis of this happiness feeling, you think, oh, I'm happy. You see, that's the way it works. So the problem, so this is why, you see, because we do not pay attention to other things, we look happiness exclusively outside, in terms of clothing, housing, cars, partner, music, food, etc. So we spend all of our time and energy trying to adjust the external world in a way that we feel comfortable. So the problem is that we also have a mental consciousness, you see. So not only we have a 5 sense consciousness, but we have also a mental consciousness. And the mental consciousness has the ability to experience happiness or suffering independent of the quality of the sensory experience. So you see, you might put a lot of effort in surrounding yourself with very pleasant object and everything, see. Nevertheless, because the mental consciousness is left as it is, then there is when you wake up in the morning, you feel unhappy, or you feel unsatisfied, you see, or you feel something is missing, or you feel a void or whatever, or you feel depressed, or you feel anxious, or you feel nervous. Okay, so this is because this mental consciousness has the ability to produce its own suffering independently on the quality of the contact. And you might also find in life other people who maybe do not have the level of comfort that we have. Nevertheless, they seems to float on everything. It seems that even so they have like health problem, they maintain like a cheerful mind. They are very light, they maintain a cheerful mind. And instead, other people who are extremely wealthy and maybe they're also healthy and everything, then they're extremely difficult to please and satisfy, see? And they're always, you know, angry. So this is because, you see, the mental consciousness has the power to create its own suffering and happiness independently of the quality of the contact. So this is why it is very important to take care of the mind, because happiness, you see, is a state of mind. Therefore, it cannot come from exclusively from external condition. Of course, external condition, to some extent, they are important because, for example, according to the history, you see, and the development of technology, we have made a lot of progress and we have increased, you see, we have made extraordinary discovery and we have increased our health, you know, the ability we have an ability to live longer and everything. Nevertheless, you know, somehow all of this external development, all of this development, all of this energy that is thrown exclusively outside in trying exclusively to understand the external world and to control the external world, they have created also another level of complication in our life. Now our life becomes very, very complicated. And just to barely survive, you need to study for 20 years. You see, this is because the society becomes very, very complex. Okay. And we also, you know, due to this quest of controlling and trying to extract as much happiness and pleasure as we can from the external world, we have also completely ravaged the planet. We have, you know, we have polluted it. We have like, yeah, you all know, you know, the state of the earth now. It's quite difficult, and up to the point where now even, you know, staying at the sun or even eating can become dangerous. It can become dangerous. So this is the result of trying to extract as much as possible, you know, pleasure only externally and trying to be only focused toward these external goals, you see. And therefore we have completely left the mind. We have completely been uninterested in taking care of our mind, trying to understand how it works and trying to take care of it. So you see, in terms of the happiness, if our mind is peaceful, if our mind is clear and peaceful, whatever the situation, then you'll be happy and peaceful. If the mind is unpeaceful, is unclear, if the mind is uncontaminated or polluted, then whatever the situation will be unhappy, will be agitated, will be nervous, will be anxious or whatever. So there is this important on trying to pacify the mind because as we said at the beginning, the nature of the mind, really the final nature of the mind is clear light. And it is uncontaminated. All of this distorted and agitated mental occurrences, they only takes place on the surface of the mind. You know, they are like anger, like greed, like jealousy or envy or resentment. All of this neurotic state of mind, they do not penetrate the nature of the mind. They are just adventitious. They depend on causes and condition. Therefore, if we change the causes and condition, then we can somehow stop the occurrence of this state of mind. And the mind can become, you know, a source of happiness for itself, in itself. The fact that we are unhappy today, or the fact we have difficulties, or we are unsatisfied, is just due to the wrong functioning of the mind. The mind doesn't work well. So we need to adjust this functioning of the mind, the functioning of the mind. And in terms of pacifying the mind, we can distinguish several levels of pacification. We have a first level of pacification of the mind, which is brought by an ethical behavior. Then we have a more deeper level of pacification of the mind, which is brought by the development of meditative stabilization. And then finally, we have the ultimate level of pacification of the mind, which is definite, which is brought by wisdom, by understanding. And that wisdom and understanding uproot the distortions from the mind that create all of these unhappy state of mind or deluded state of mind. Okay, so through his text, Nagarjuna, this letter to a friend, he will explain, those different level of pacification of the mind through reliving the bodhisattva path, which is the path of the disciple who intend into actualizing the highest result, which is the final vehicle of the Buddha, the state of Buddhahood, which is the perfection of the state of mind, which is the consciousness to its culmination. Okay, this is done through this different level of pacification of the mind. So also, you see, if we are not Buddhist and we are not interested in Buddhahood or liberation, or even if we do not believe or we are not convinced into this future life, past life, and all these kind of things, nevertheless, there is so many informations here in these treaties that we can benefit from. You see, that will really help us in our daily life in keeping a state of mind more peaceful, more serene, on a daily basis. So this is I think the benefit is like 365 degrees. So now, in terms of looking at our mind, you see, we have said at the beginning that the way we look for happiness is through the pleasant contact of the senses. Okay, so if the contact is pleasant, if the contact is discriminated as pleasant, there is happiness feeling, and if the contact is discriminated as unpleasant, then there is a suffering feeling. Okay, there is also the neutral feeling when the mind is indifferent. Okay. So basically, this is our day. You see, during the day, we try to get in contact with pleasant object, and we try to keep distant from unpleasant situation, unpleasant object. When I talk about object, I don't mean like things. I mean like object of the mind. See, or an object of knowledge. What the mind knows is an object of knowledge. So please keep in mind that object. It's just what the mind knows. What the mind knows. It can know people. It can know situation. It can know concrete things. But that's what we call an object. Okay, it's object of knowledge. So as I said before, so now in terms of, so we have those five sense consciousness, and each of the five sense consciousness has its respective objects, and we are in a desire realm. And what does that mean, being in a desire realm? It means that those consciousness, they are thirsty. You see, they crave for their respective objects. So the hear consciousness will crave for pleasant sound. The taste consciousness will crave for pleasure, pleasurable taste, etc., etc. So what about the mind? How can the mind produce happiness feeling and suffering feeling? Simply because the mental consciousness also has its own respective objects. What are the objects of the mental consciousness? They are concepts, thoughts. Thoughts and concepts are the object of the mental consciousness. Okay, that's how it is. So what is this concept? You see, how does it work? To keep it simply, when you think about a particular person or a particular place or whatever, there is an image. You see, in this concept is wrapped up in the thought. There is an image. Okay, it's called a meaning generality. Okay, it's the representation of the object. It's not the object itself. It's just a representation. And through this representation, we can understand the actual things, even though it's not the actual thing itself. So when this image, when this appearance that arises in the mind is discriminated, or the contact is discriminated as pleasant, then there is happiness feeling. If the image that arises in the mind, see, is discriminated as unpleasant, then there is an unpleasant feeling. So it's the same. In a finger snap, you have 65 instance of mental consciousness, and you have 65 instance of conceptual mind, and therefore 65 instance of feeling. See, and this conceptual mind is always there, you know, from the morning, as soon as we wake up, until the evening when we lose consciousness. You see, you have always this mind all day long. It's all day long. Okay, so and the problem is most of the time we are completely unaware of the narrative of this mind. You know, we're completely unaware about the conceptualization. We only become aware of it when it disturbs, when the voice is too high. You see, the anguish is too high. So then we start to feel really the coarse level of suffering. Okay. Nevertheless, this nagging mind, you see, is always there. It's always criticizing. Oh, look at this person. Oh, look at that. Oh, this is not right. Oh, I'm not happy about this. Oh, my life, blah, blah, blah. Oh, myself, I don't have this. I'm not like this. It's always, you always have this nagging mind. And of course, you see, all of this appearance that we let to arise in the mind, they are all accompanied by feeling. And this is why, you see, even though we try to be surrounded by pleasant things, because of this nagging mind as a bad habit of picking up only defect, of being unsatisfied, you see, is completely unruly. Therefore, it produces this background of unhappiness feeling that accompanies us all day, all our life. And this is why, you see, at the end of the day, we are very tired also because of all day, see, all day. So this is, you see, even so, we are not interested in becoming a Buddha or future life and past life, doesn't matter. This is something real. This is something now. And it is something that we can do something about this. And if we can, you see, try to control and reduce this level of conceptualization, or just change the nature of the conceptualization, then we will feel immediate benefits in our mind. Okay. So you see, this conceptualization that goes on and goes on about insatisfaction, about greed, about pride, about resentment, about jealousy, goes on, you know, since our childhood. You see, since our childhood, and they make us unhappy. And they also, and this is, we have now the proof, you see, at the scientific level of this, it also endeblish the immune system. You see, it's also endeblish the immune system. So having a happy mind, there's benefit at the level of the mental happiness that you feel, you know, having the mind that conceptualized properly, that conceptualize in a way that it produces experience of happiness, you will also have the benefit of being to have a better immune system, to be more healthy. So those are this connection now between the mind and the body. You see, it is also something that is accepted by modern science. See, they have realized that the development of the cultivation of a feeling of love and compassion has an effect on the level of happiness of the person, of course, but also on the health of that individual. And they also now have realize that people who are extremely agitated, you know, people who are a lot of anger, you know, this have an effect, so also on health. Anyway, so you see, this is why it is important to take care of the mind, because what we want to be happy, and happiness is a state of mind. Therefore, we need to take care of this mind. We need to take care of this mental consciousness. We cannot only base our happiness on external things, on external, on sense object. It is something that doesn't work and will never work. We miss something. It is important to have some a basis of comfort. You see, it's important to have a basis of comfort, to have enough, to eat, to shelter yourself, and to cure ourselves when we are sick. Nevertheless, we also need to take care of this mental consciousness. Yeah? So in terms of being happy, we have to start to live in a bigger introspection, mindfulness and introspection, and try to enter in contact with this conceptualization that we have, because this is really the fabric of our mind, let's say, at some level. So we have to understand what type of mind we have, what type of thought it's always present in us, what type of mental affliction we are very familiar. Do we have always thought of anger? Do we always have thought of attachment? Do we have always thought of pride? What is the attitude that creates the most disturbance in us? In this way, we understand how we can start to work on our mind. Yeah. So this is the first thing. The first thing is to try to live in a bigger introspection and mindfulness, and try to listen. We should be always aware of the type of thought that we have, the type of feeling that we have, the type of intention and motivation. We should know our mind. We should know ourselves, basically. Okay. And on this basis, we can understand what type of thought produces suffering and what type of thought produces happiness. And what we have to do is we have to diminish one and increase the others. You see, the mind is the creator of habits. Okay, the mind is, maybe we'll have the time later in other session to discuss about it, what is the nature of the mind and how does it come, where it comes from, and everything. So basically, anyway, let's jump right away to the conclusion that the mind is empty by nature. Okay, so it's the union of clarity and emptiness, and is cognizant, and is clear and cognizant. Clear and cognizant, what does that mean? Is a clear knower. It means that it has the ability to reflect. It's like a mirror. It has the ability to reflect things, and he has the ability to know to know the reflection. Okay, to know it. The mind generates itself in the aspects of the object. That's the way cognition is done, and is also aware. There is also the ascertainment of that aspect of the mind. Okay, so another aspect of the mind another attribute is that it is a creator of habits. A creator of habit means that the mind will automatically produce what it has been accustomed with. So all of our pattern, all of our thought pattern, all of our reaction, you see, they are the result of a familiarity, of a process of familiarity. So the mind is clear and knowing. It is clear. It is not by itself virtuous or non-virtuous. We can just accustom the mind with virtue, or we can also accustom the mind with non-virtue. We have to understand, well, what is the benefit. If the mind is accustomed to no virtue, then there is suffering. If the mind is accustomed to virtue, there is happiness. Why? This has to do with the basic psychology of presented in Buddhism, that there is some, when you divide the mind, is divided into sense consciousness, main mind, and mental factor. Okay. So the main mind, there are 5 sense consciousness and 1 mental consciousness. So those mind, they only know the bare entity of the object in front. They're a little bit dull somehow. They're just aware that for the eye consciousness, for example, is just aware that there is a color or a shape in front. And accompanying those mind, you have all the mental events. The mental events, they engage the attribute of the object. So the main mind engage the entity of the object, and the mental factor that accompany this mind, they will go and engage the different attribute of the object. And somehow this what give the color to the perception. It makes the perception complete, and it gives a particular experience. Okay? It will build a particular experience. So in terms of this mental factor, you have some mental factors which are omnipresent, some that are determining to the cognition, and some that are virtuous and non-virtuous. So in the context of knowing how happiness and suffering comes from the mind, we have to be clear with the virtuous mental factor and the non-virtuous mental factor. So every time that the mind is under the influence of a non-virtuous mental factor, then necessarily there will be a suffering experience. For example, if aversion is present in the mind, then necessarily aversion is accompanied by a suffering experience. Every time that envy is present in the mind, every time that jealousy is present in the mind, or resentment is present in the mind, then every time those mental factors are necessarily accompanied by an experience of suffering. Yeah. So we have to recognize those, and instead we have the virtuous mental factor. With virtuous mental factor, every time that they're present in the mind, then the mind experiences happiness. For example, when there is equanimity, when there is love, when there is compassion, all of this, when there is patience, all of these mental factors, they are necessarily accompanied with an experience of happiness. So we have to understand. So you see, we have to look our mind. We have to understand and recognize what are the This is just an habit to take right now. We become upset, and because of having this aversion, then there is the mental factor of suffering. It is there. So we have to understand that this doesn't help. And instead of being upset, we should be patient. You see, or instead of having so in this way. More conducive to peace and happiness. So this is the very basic. So this is like basic psychology. Okay. So this is why the first thing is to become more introspect. And actually, when you translate the term Buddhist in Tibetan is Nampa, and the Nampa is the one from inside. You see, the one that turn is mind inside. So we translate as Buddhist, but actually in Tibetan, literally it means the one from inside. It is the one who have turned his mind inside and is observing and operating on his mind, is refining his mind is bringing his mind in a certain direction, which is more conducive to happiness. Okay. So that's one thing. So does it make sense what I'm saying so far, or is it confusing? Yeah. Okay. So if you have, of course, we will leave some space for the question at the end. But at some point, you see, if something is disturbing you or you don't really understand, raise your hand and we'll try to find. I try to stop at the proper time and give you the opportunity to ask for clarification. Okay, so that's the first thing. The first thing is we have to, because we want to be happy, we have to understand that happiness comes from the mind, And first, it comes from the way we think. Our mind is left unattentive, is left without any type of care, and therefore it produces, bad habits. When we are in a certain situation, now simultaneously, not simultaneously, but immediately, we generate attachment, or we generate aversion, or we generate pride. So this is due to habit. You see, this is due to habit. And we can slowly develop the same habits with love, compassion, equanimity, understanding of reality. Those are things that can be cultivated simply because the mind is clear, you see, and it is a creator of habits. Not only that, but the mind not being something that belongs to the realm of that which is atomically established as matter, then it can be developed exponentially, limitlessly. For example, an athlete, he can run fast until a certain limit. You can jump until a certain age. You can you can carry a certain weight. You can lift up a certain weight, but there is a limit. See, there is a limit that will never be able to go beyond, okay? Because the body is obstructive. But in terms of the mind, it is not like this. You can develop love and compassion limitlessly. You cannot say, oh, I only have space for 2,365 people. Then it's finished. I cannot extend my love above this. It doesn't work like this, you see. You can develop the mind of love, of compassion limitlessly. And we can, through the process of contemplation, we can become so familiarized with this attitude that it arises spontaneously every time we meet people, and it never goes away, you see. And therefore, because this mind of love and compassion is always accompanied by a happiness feeling, since this mind of love, you see, is been cultivated, then you always have it, then you're always happy, no matter what's happening around you, because you have this mind of love, of compassion, of altruism, then the mind is always happy. So this is the difference in terms of trying to find happiness outside and trying to find happiness inside. It means that you can refine your mind in a way that the mere functioning of the mind produces happiness. You do not need anymore a particular object. You do not need anymore a particular circumstances to be happy. Just the mere functioning of the mind, because it is virtuous, because he has the understanding of reality, we'll see that later, then the mind, you see, is happy. And so that happiness become unconditioned to some extent. It does not depend on external circumstances. Now, to be happy, we depend so much on external circumstances. Not only that, but we have an exaggerated dependence. We have to see, for example, when we travel, how much things we need just to feel comfortable. So much things we carry to feel comfortable. Or also in terms of our attachment, you see, in terms of other people, we are so attached, again, that we empower others so much that our happiness, it's almost like as if our happiness depend on others. Okay, let me see. Of course, our happiness depends on others, but it's not in another way. But in terms of our attachment, you see, if we give our happiness, we give our personal well-being in the mind, in the end of others, and in this way we become very dependent. We become very we don't have the we are in a situation which is how do you say in English, forgot about this term. Sorry. Yeah, so like a kind of precarious situation. It's not comfortable, because according to the behavior of that person, toward we have attachment to, then we become happy, or we become sad. For example, if this person leaves us, we become very sad. If this person does not pay attention to us, we become very sad. So you see, to empower others to that level is not very healthy. Why? Because another person also have ignorance, another person also has attachment, has a self-searching mind, have jealousy, as anger and everything. So this is not a source of happiness. We understand that that type of situation is not a source of happiness. Of course, we can enjoy sharing the life with someone, but we should be careful that our happiness does not exclusively, depend on that person. Because everything is impermanent. That's life. We all have to die, so at some point we will be separated from that person. Feelings also are impermanent. You see, the way you perceive someone at some point will be different than the way you perceive at another moment. So therefore, attachment can disappear. So we have to understand that, and we become a bit clear later in the text, that everything in cyclic existence, you see, is not reliable. People are not, in terms of our own happiness, people are not reliable. Things are not reliable. Circumstances are not reliable, because everything is permanent and not under our power. You see, it's not under our control. Anyway, so this is I think this is enough for introduction. Yeah. So now we can maybe start to move with the text, and then slowly you will see through the different section of the text. Nagarjuna will explain, you see, how you can achieve an ever deeper and stable state of happiness until it becomes completely rooted in the nature of the mind, and it is unconditioned and cannot be affected anymore, because this is the scope of Buddhism. The scope of Buddhism is only to alleviate the suffering of people and to bring them to higher and higher level of happiness until the state of Buddhahood, which is considered as the culmination of the mind, in which all defect have been uprooted and all quality have been consumed. Okay, so I will try according to the best of my abilities to convey the meaning of the text. So is there any question so far? Okay, so if there is no question, then we move on. So the text that we are going to see together is the Letter to a Friend. Okay, so it's by Arya Nagarjuna. As I said before, Nagarjuna came around 400 years after the parinirvana of the Buddha. Okay, so it's pretty much like 80 BC, and it's supposed to pretty much like this. Okay, and it was predicted by the Buddha in many different sutras. At the time already of the Buddha, in some discourses, the Buddha announced the coming of Nagarjuna in the future as being an extraordinary being, and he said that he will revive his own vehicle. So when Nagarjuna came around, you know that the teachings of the Buddha can be divided in two vehicles, the Hinayana vehicle and the Mahayana vehicle. So the Hinayana vehicle, it is the form of Buddhism which is practiced mainly in South Asia. So basically it is like one section of the teachings of the Buddha. It's not the complete, it's one section. And the bigger section is the Mahayana, which also includes to some extent the practice and the contemplation of the Hinayana vehicle. And the Mahayana, so the Mahayana vehicle is practiced in northern Vietnam, in China, in Japan, Tibet, of course, and then you have also in Russia. You have two regions where the Mahayana Buddhism also developed. Okay, so the difference between the two is that in the Hinayana vehicle, the main emphasis is on the personal cessation of the suffering. Okay, so you want to attain the personal liberation, emancipation from suffering. And in the Mahayana, it has a higher goal, because what's the bodhisattva, which is the one intended into the obtaining the state of Buddhahood, it is rooted in compassion, and the scope is not the elimination of one's personal suffering, but the suffering in general. So it has so the scope is very different, the emphasis is very different, and of course the practice also very different. You will see. So at the time of Nagarjuna, almost the Mahayana had almost disappeared. There were no one really being able to explain the final view in terms of the understanding of reality, and also the vast practice that the Bodhisattva was supposed to carry on. And so when Nagarjuna came, he revived the Mahayana vehicle. He revived either in terms of the view, also in terms of the method side, the conduct of the Bodhisattva. And is said to be similar in the Buddha. He said sometimes it's called the second Buddha, because at the times of the Buddha, you had the three turning of the wheel, the wheel of the Four Noble Truths in Sanat, the wheel of the Prajnaparamita in Rajgir, and the wheel of correct discrimination in Vaishali, that are connected with different sections of the teachings. And it is said also that Nagarjuna has those three sections, those three parts of his life, where in this first part he did something similar to the teachings, to the content of the teaching of the first wheel, because the first wheel were intended to personal liberation. And in the first part of the life of Nagarjuna, he worked a lot on restoring, clarifying the conduct of the monk, which is intended toward personal liberation. And also in the second turning of the wheel of the Buddha has to do with the view of the final view of reality, the Madhyamika view. And there we have Nagarjuna with his 6 treatises on reasoning that really clarify the final view of the Buddha, and in particular texts like the treatise, the fundamental treatise of Middle Way, which is considered, one of the most important in our tradition. And then finally, in the third turning of the wheel of the Buddha, we have also, of course, the final discrimination, but it also where the Buddha had discourses about the Tathagata essence, the nature, the Buddha's nature, the nature that exists in every sentient beings. And in the same way, Nagarjuna, in this third part of activity, the third type of activity, he composed praise to the Dharmadhatu, and where different set of praises were also clarified, and the Tathagata essence of the Buddha nature that exists in all sentient beings. So this is why it can be considered sometimes as the second Buddha. And so in this text is letter to a friend. It is a set of advice that covers the whole Bodhisattva path, and it was composed on the request of one of his disciples, was the king Survabhibhadra. Okay, and this is the short version. There is a longer version of it. So this version has a 123 stanza, and there is the longer version of advice, letter to a king, is called the precious garland of advice to the king. The precious garland that has 500 stanza is for the same disciple, the same king, but somehow it is like a bigger composition. Okay, so now we are together with this letter to a king, the short one, and as we say, it is composed on the request of the king, Survavi Bhadra. Okay, and there is different commentaries that have been done by the Tibetan Pandit, the Tibetan scholar, about this letter to a king, and it was some outlines were used to cut the text and organize the text in different way. We are going to use, I'm going to use the Randawa's outline, okay? And Randawa was one of the teachers of Lama Tsongkhapa, okay? He was a Sakya master. And so I'm going to use Randawa. And Randawa, it divides the text in 3 sections, which are general advice concerning the virtuous practice. Then we have the second section, which is developing aversion towards samsara, so understanding the suffering nature of cyclic existence to generate this mind of definite emergence. And then the last section is to pursue the path to nirvana. In terms of nirvana, in this context, is the highest nirvana, the non-abiding nirvana, which is the state of Buddhahood. Okay? So this is how we are trying to view the text. It is the first time that I use these outlines. In the past, I always did it with the outlines by this Geluk Geshe Losang Jimpa, where he divides the text in terms of the 3 types of being, the being of the small scope, the being of middling scope, and the being of the great scope. And I found sometimes very uncomfortable with this division, because often they were like section of the being of the small scope inside of the section of the being of the middling scope, etc. So it didn't make much sense to me. Well, of course, this is my my own personal view, and I found so I said this time I'm going to try with Randawa. And when I look at how the text was cut, it was more fluid. I couldn't see a contradiction between the different sections. And there is also another cutting of the text by Sakya Pandita, and he organized. I couldn't find any translation of this one, of those outlines, so they would have to be translated. Of Sakya Pandita, and he cut the text in terms of the 3 higher training. The 3 higher training, which are the higher training in ethic, the higher training in meditative stabilization, and the higher training in wisdom. This is also, I think, I would like to see this outline. It seems very interesting, and also makes sense according to my memory of the text. I think it should fit quite well. And finally, we have this Nyingma Lama, Mipam Rinpoche. And he cuts, he put a more emphasis on the 6th perfection. So he organized the text in terms of the 6th perfection, and it seems to be quite fluid as well. Okay, so keep in mind that Jetsun Randawa's commentary has been also translated into English. It is published by the Library of Tibetan Work and Archive. So for those who read English, they can read this. The Mipam commentary also, there is a translation in English. It's quite old, but you can navigate through the text. And there is also another commentary published by Wisdom by this great Geluk Geshe Tupten Zopa, Geshe Zopa, who lived in the United States for many years, was a great scholar. And I think there is also another English commentary by Nyingma Lama. It is published by Padmakara. It's called Letter to a Friend. So you see, I mean, I don't know if in Russian one of those books have been translated. Anyway, not sure. So anyway, for those who read English, there is some literature. Yeah. So the commentary I'm gonna give, the explanation, is based on the commentary that I've received from my teacher, and also I've listened another commentary from another Gelug Geshe, and I sometimes when some section of the text where I was unsatisfied with the explanation received, I went to check Randawa, and I found it quite illuminating sometimes. Okay, so this is how we're going to proceed, and if we look at the text, the text in Sanskrit, okay, is Shuriyeka, okay, it's a letter to a friend, and there is no normally on your text you shouldn't see any homage to because the homage was inserted by the translator. In some section you have in some translation you have a homage to Manjushri, but this is added by the translator. And we enter into the first section, which covers the first three stanza, and it is the recommendation to heed. So the exhortation to listen, basically, it's an exhortation. So Nagarjuna is talking. Remember that he's talking to a king. Okay. You have to keep this in mind, and you have to keep also in mind that that was written before Christ. Okay, so sometime we will have to adapt. Okay, we'll have to adapt. Okay, anyway, so the first stanza read. So I have the two translation in front of me. I have the translation of Alexander Bezin that our translator will mainly use, but I also have another translation that I'm more familiar with. Okay, but I try to read Bezin translation, so it's easier for our translator. Or you, with the nature of good quality, who's become worthy through constructive deed, please listen to these verses of noble meters, which have compiled in a short for the sake of instilling an intention for the positive force that comes from following explanation of the blissful gone Buddha's speech. Okay, so that's the first stanza. So basically, there is a "Ho you." When you say "Ho you," he's talking to the king itself. Say "Ho you." And then after he says, with the nature of good quality who becomes worthy through constructive deeds. So you see, this king has this great accumulation of virtue. He's someone who has practiced virtue in his life and his past life. This is why he has the status of a king now. He has this precious existence, and though with plenty of good attributes. So he's the one with somehow Nagarjuna says he has familiarity with virtue, and is the nature of good quality. Okay, nature of good quality. So it is someone virtuous. Yes, he's intended toward virtue, and is backed up by this great accumulation. Okay, and then he said, "I have arranged," or it said, "Please listen to these verses in noble meters." So noble meters actually is called the Arya Giti. The Arya Giti, it is the metric system that were used at the time to compose those verses. So probably neither in English nor in Russian it fits, you see, but it has a certain number of meter, and this number of meters is called Arya Giti. Okay, so in the text has been translated as noble meters, see, but Arya Giti in Sanskrit, which I've compiled in short for the sake of instilling a good positive forces that comes from following the explanation of the blissful one. The blissful one is called the Sugata, the one gone to bliss, Sugata in Sanskrit. So he explained here that the reason for his composition. The reason for his composition is to aspire those who are endowed with good quality and merit, to inspire them. It says to instill an intention of positive force. So here it is translated in this way, but actually to aspire for the what is this? What is the positive force that we inspire. It is because the teachings of the Buddha, they give rise to temporary and definite goodness. Okay, through the speech of the Buddha, as a condition, then one can create the cause by abandoning what has to be abandoned and developing what has to be developed, can create the cause for a temporary happiness. And what is the temporary happiness? It is the happiness in cyclic existence, or what we call the ultimate happiness, ultimate or definite goodness. What is the definite goodness is twofold. It is the liberation, or it is the state of Buddhahood. So you see, the reason for composing the text is for those who aspire to this virtue, the temporary virtue or temporary goodness or definite goodness, to actualize this state, because those two goodness, as it is said in the text, they comes from following the explanation, the speech of the Buddha. Okay, so from all the different activities of the Buddha, we said that the one of his speech, it is supreme. You see, all infinite quality, the one of the speech is supreme. Why? Because it is through the speech that the Buddha can reveal, share the Dhamma. What is the Dhamma? The Dhamma is the sharing of the experience of the Buddha. Okay, the Buddha has attained enlightenment, and the Dhamma, motivated by compassion, you see, he explained the result and the way to actualize this result. So this is why we consider that the activity of the speech, it is the most supreme activity. So we also understand here that because it says the explanation of the bliss of the Sugata, so that this is not an invention of Nagarjuna. It is not something that is made up. It is actually the speech of the Buddha. Okay, and then we have the second stanza. It says, just as the wise venerate the statue of the blissful God, again the Sugata, even out of wood, regardless of how it's been made, likewise, also this poetry of mine may be deficient. Please do not scorn it, since it's based on expression of the allowed Dharma. Okay, and then here there is two things. First, it says, just that the wise venerate the statue of the Sugata, even made of wood, regardless how it is made. So you see, for those who take refuge and who have actually properly take refuge through ceremony and everything, there is a 12 precept that they have to observe, and one of the precepts of the Buddha in relation to the Buddha is not to discriminate. You see, usually we have tendency to discriminate in terms of the quality of the material, but for someone who have take refuge into the Buddha, if the Buddha is made of wood or the Buddha is made of gold, it represents the Dharmakaya. See, it represents the complete enlightenment, and therefore the value from that angle is the same. The ability of the artist is secondary. The quality of the material is secondary. There is no difference from a Buddha which is made of wood or the Buddha which is made of gold. It has exactly the same meaning. It represents the same thing. So here, this is how the wise will behave. And then Nagarjuna says, similarly, he said, likewise, also this poetry of mine may be deficient. Please do not scorn it, since it's based on the expression of the allowed Dharma. So Nagarjuna, he put a little bit himself down here. It says, see that my composition is not so good, blah, blah. But he said, nevertheless, do not pay attention to the form, but pay attention to the meaning, because the meaning is the word of the Buddha. And from that point of view, see, it's final. So that stanza actually teach what we call the four reliance. In Buddhism, we have four reliance that explain more or less how to relate to the teachings. Okay, and they underline the analytical aspects, or the how to probe the teaching, that the teaching is never something that we have to accept, but it is something that we have to probe. It is not something that we have to accept right away, but it's something that we have to accept after probing the validity of the teaching. And this shows us the 4 reliance. So the first reliance is, do not rely on the teacher, but rely on the teaching. Okay. So what does that mean? It means that sometimes, you see, and this is very very present in our life, because Buddhism is new for us, and we do not have enough background, you see, and enough say gap. So often we rely on the teacher. What does that mean to rely on the teacher? It means that we know that this great Lama is coming to town, so he has the title, or he has the name, or he has the fame, and that's it. For us, that's enough. We go and we accept everything he says. See, so that's the first mistake. Okay, we should not rely on the teacher, but we should rely on the teaching. Yeah. It means we have to not to pay attention too much to the person, but to what he says, and to perform the first analysis, the first on this basis, okay, on the basis of the discourse. Okay? So and for that they were like an event at the time of the Buddha, where the Buddha was speaking with Tirthikas, non-Buddhist, and most of them, they were not accepting the Buddha, as valid. And one of his disciples, I don't know which one was it at that time, he was very advanced, probably was an Arhat or very close, and he was teaching, and he realized that the person in front of him, they didn't have any faith in the Buddhas, and they were criticizing him, and he felt very sad. And he said, "Well," I said, if they could know the quality of the Buddha, they will generate faith immediately." So he started to produce faith in the mind of those people. He started to display what we call magical emanation, magical manifestation, because he was an Arhat, and because he has like profound realization and deep meditative stabilization. He performed like series of what we could call like miracles, whatever, and the people immediately see, they generate faith, and they say, wait, you say, this is only me. You should see, my teacher. My teacher is like, wow, it is like another level. And so everybody was like enchanted, and this came to the ears of the Buddha. And the Buddha, when he heard that monk, he performed all of these magical deeds, he felt very sad. And he was not he showed the aspect of not being happy. And he said, due to that, my teaching will degenerate. He said, this is the way you create the degeneration of the teaching. Because, and they ask why, because all of these people, they again face in the Buddha, It said simply because what is important is not, those display of the body, because those display of the body, you see, they can also be performed by Rishi of other tradition. What is important is the view, you see, the validity of the teachings, to understand the understanding suffering, understanding the origin of suffering and the cessation of suffering. So this is what we mean by relying on the people and not on the person, and not on the teachings. And the Buddha in this is so that would create the generation of the teachings, because people will not follow the teachings, will not probe the teaching with analysis, but will follow, you see, the person, the name, the fame, say all of this kind of things. So anyway, so that was just a parenthesis. So do not rely on the teacher, but on the teaching. The second is do not rely on the name, but on the meaning. Okay, do not rely on the name, but on the meaning. So what does that mean? This means that do not rely on the form, but do not rely too much on the composition, but rely on the deep meaning of the teaching. What's the teaching is the final intention, the final meaning, the actual meaning of the teachings. You know, some people would just, you know, like Nagarjuna, he says, my composition is poor, but pay attention, you see, to the meaning. And the third one is do not rely on interpretative teaching, but rely on definitive teachings. So in terms of the teachings of the Buddha, because the Buddha was was teaching directly to the people in front of him and was exclusively explaining what was beneficial at that time to a particular person, then in the different discourse comes different view in terms of reality. And some people would see, if you look at the teaching of the Buddha roughly, you might find contradiction, but actually there's no contradiction. It's just the view on reality that become subtler and subtler and subtler. So everything which is not the final view of the Buddha, which is the Madhyamika view, Madhyamika Prasangika view, all the rest is interpretative, okay? So the view of Chittamatra, for example, the view of Tantrika, etc., all of this is interpretative. It has a function, there is a basis of intention, there is a purpose, but there is a harm through analysis, okay? So here the Buddha, here the Nagarjuna is saying also, is implying, this is the third reliance, do not rely on the interpretative teaching, but you have to rely on the final teaching. And then finally, the fourth level of reliance, it's to not rely on the conceptual understanding, on the inference, on the conceptual understanding, but to rely on the direct knowledge. So this is also something that we understand, that has to be understood in the light of those slightly hidden phenomena, for example, subtle impermanence, but in particular with the teaching on emptiness. The teaching on emptiness is first understood conceptually. See, you analyze and you use reasoning, and you gain some conceptual understanding of emptiness. But this should not, we should not be satisfied with this. We should move to the direct perception, because only the direct perception is the final antidote. So this is what it says here. Yeah. Yeah. So it's a let me see the last. Since it is based on the expression of the hollow Dharma. Okay. So only the Buddha's speech. Okay. Only the Buddha's speech possesses the two goodness, the temporary goodness and the definite goodness. Therefore, listen. Okay. So regardless of the quality of the composition, pay attention to the meaning, because from that, you know, the true goodness will definitely arise. So this is what is explained here, and it is 7:28. So I'm probably going to stop here. If there is some question, maybe that would be the time. Okay. So if there is no question, then there's something in the chat. So I don't know if it's for me or what. Oh, it's all in Russian. It's definitely not for me. Okay. So that's all for tonight. So now we're going through the dedication. Okay. So as you know, it's important. What is important at the beginning is the motivation, because it will create, it becomes the cause for the result. So the highest is the motivation, the greater will be the result. And then at the end, what is important is the dedication. In this way, the virtue we have created for our effort will not be wasted, in like insignificant ripening in cyclic existence, but will become a cause, to actualize the final result. They will be protected and will be continue to increase until the final result. It's like when you put a drop. If you leave a drop on the plate, then very quickly it will evaporate. But if you put your drop in the ocean, then your drop potentially, in essence, in substance, it remains until the oceans remain. So in the same way, we are going to dedicate our virtue. We are going to add our virtue, our very small virtue, to the ocean of virtue of the great bodhisattvas and the Buddhas. And in this way, they will continuously, we will continuously harvest benefits until we achieve our results. Okay? So that's the meaning of dedication. So yeah, so if we you can move to dedication if you want. So there's a question.
Yes, one question appeared.
Okay.
Женя, я тогда прочитаю по-русски для записи, и ты по-английски перейдешь. Спасибо большое. Вопрос. Я так понимаю, школа Вайбхашика уже не существует. Когда говорится о школах, например, Вайбхашика, то ведь это мнение про сангиков в Вайбхашике. То есть реальный Вайбхашик мог бы сказать, что вы совсем не то нам приписываете.
Okay. Yeah. Not sure there is some Vaibhashika also these days, this for sure. And also at the time of the Buddha, those philosophical schools, you see, even after, after at the time of Nagarjuna, Chandrakirti, there were no such philosophical schools. You see, those philosophical school, Vaibhashika, Sotantrika, Chittamatra, Madhyamika, the division into the Madhyamika, the division of the Sotantrika, the division of the Chittamatra, the division of the Vaibhashika. All of this is something made up by Tibetans. Okay, before you see, before in Nalanda, at the time of Nagarjuna, Chandrakirti, people were debating reality, and according to what teacher they had. Then some were having or producing the Chittamatra understanding, some were producing the Madhyamika Svatantrika, some the Madhyamika Sotantrika, some the Madhyamika Prasangika, and they were all, explaining themselves in the courtyard, you see. But so there were no name. Those views were existing, but they were not systematized. The systematization of those views, they have been made up by the Tibetan scholars for the sake of understanding and understanding, you see, better, or clarifying the intention of the Buddha. So if the fact that they exist or they do not exist right now doesn't really matter, because what is important is that the Buddha, at some point, he taught that view. That the fact that that if they were like a Sotantrika or a Chittamatra right now, he would not say, "Oh, I didn't say that," or "I didn't say this," etc. It is also something something secondary, because those classification of views, they are not for the purpose of debate or discussion or shutting one up, you see, or imposing one's own view. Is for the purpose of our own, is for our own benefits. It's like stepping stone. Is there like stepping stones in refining our own vision of reality. And those stepping stones are somehow very useful and necessary. Therefore, at the beginning, you study what we call Vaibhashika, okay, and then what we call Sotantrika and Chittamatra and Madhyamika, because there is a progression in terms of the subtlety of the position of the positing of the two truths, see, and that's the benefit of it. But when we see the what we call tenant in Tibetan drupta. Drupta means established conclusion. So what do? Actually, those scholars, you see, those scholars, they did an incredible work, because they took the sutras, the different sutras, and then they read, and then they pushed the discussion, you see, they pushed the conclusion, and they regroup sets of teachings that were not contradictory into different sections. And then they give a name, you know, and that name is given according to some reason. For example, the Vaibhashika, you see, they are called the particularists, because they depend mainly on those presentation of the Abhidharma, etc. Anyway, this is secondary. So what I want to say is, it doesn't matter if now there is no Vaibhashika, because we are not discussing the tenant system for the purpose of debating with someone, but for the purpose of refining our own understanding of reality. So we move for a coarser presentation, which is found in this classification, in this class basket of teaching, and then we move on to another subtler one, and we move on to another subtler one, and in this way we can progressively bring the final view, Prasangika Madhyamika, into our grasp. So that's one way to look at things. This is the way you have to move through those teachings. You have to identify in yourself those particular view, and then you use the argumentation to overcome that view and to get an understanding of reality, which is more subtle. So basically, you have to put your 2 feet into what we call the Vaibhashika or the Santatrika system, and you have to understand it from inside, and then you see the contradiction with the other expression and the other exposition, and then you move on in this way. So so this is secondary. There are teachings of the Buddha, and they have to, therefore they need to be analyzed. Okay, and any other question? So if there is no other questions, then maybe we can stop here. Okay, so thank you all very much for your attention. I hope what I said was not too confusing. Anyway, you can always bring me some feedback through Anastasia, and I will try to correct, okay, to improve, to adjust the presentation in accordance with your wish and your reflection. Okay, so thank you very much. Thank you very much for your attention, for the time that you dedicate to the teachings of the Buddha. And this for sure will have a great result in the future. There's no doubt. Thank you very much. So maybe we can dedication.
Thank you very much. I see one person is preparing one more question. Should we wait for it?
It's all depend on the time that people have, and the translator must be tired, exhausted, I would say, probably. So what you can do, if you have questions, you can send them to me, and I can send you the WhatsApp answer, and after you can also distribute it to everybody. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Very good idea. And so I'll share the screen with dedication. Show dedication. Few verses for dedication in Russian and in Tibetan. Посвящение заслуг. В силу этой добродетели да достигну я быстро состояния гуру Будды и приведу всех без исключения существ-скитальцев к этому просветленному состоянию. И по-тибетски. Гевади нюрдудак, лама санге друбгурне, дрова чикян малюпа, дей сала гёпаршок. Пусть драгоценная выше Бодхичита, та, что не породилась, да породится, а та, что породилась, да не ослабеет, но возрастает все больше и больше. Джанчо Сянчо Римпоче, Маке Панам Кегюрчик, Кепа Нямпа Мепаи, Гомне Гомду Пелваршок. И также посвятим благую заслугу долгой жизни и дхармической активности его святейшества Далай-ламы. В земле, окруженной грядой снежных гор, ты источник всего счастья и блага. Всемогущий Чинрези, Тензин Гецо, нерешимо прибудь до исчерпания сансары. И посвящаем сегодняшнее занятие и все практики нашего центра скорейшему возвращению безошибочного воплощения Кябджи Ламсо Римпоче.
Thank you very much. So what you can do during the week, everybody, you know, maybe they have some notes or things to reflect. Okay, you reflect and try to understand if what I said makes sense. Okay, and yeah, and maybe you can come up with some extra question, and we can start to discuss. Yeah, next week. Okay. So thank you very much. Have a good week. Good evening, everybody. Again, thank you very much for this opportunity. And thank you, our translator, Zenia. Thank you for the organization, you know, Anastasia and our director, Andre. And see you soon. Okay. Thank you, everybody.